Welcome to Headline Buster, brought to you by The Point. I'm Li Xin. Today, I'll dissect China-related stories that are making headlines around the world and talk to my panel to bring you the missing pieces of the China puzzle. So join us in real time by sending us your comments and questions via the CGTN page on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube or Weibo. If you're watching this live on the CGTN application, email me at thepointwithlx@cgtn.com. Let me know what you're thinking. We'll start our live streaming every Friday at 10:30 a.m. Beijing time, so do get in touch and I might just read your comments. Today, I'm going to talk about a highly charged topic that's been a favorite among the foreign media, China's Xinjiang province and the counter-terrorism policies used to make the region safer and more stable. You've no doubt heard a lot about the what by now, but not so much about the why, I believe. Now, two English language documentaries shed light on the complexity. Released last week, they provide the background story and big picture context that's been lacking from international media reports on the topic. And these documentaries were aired on CGTN, the exact channel that you're watching. The first, Fighting Terrorism in Xinjiang, features never-before-seen images and testimonies from people impacted by terrorism, including rare video footage of the Urumqi riots in July 2009, which killed 197 people, the Kunming train station assault in March 2014, which killed 31 people, and the May 2014 Urumqi attack, which killed 43 people. Incomplete statistics show that from 1990 to 2016, thousands of violent terrorist attacks were launched in Xinjiang, killing large numbers of innocent people and hundreds of police officers. The second, called The Black Hand, the East Turkestan Islamic movement and terrorism in Xinjiang, exposes how the group brainwashes people, including children, with extremist thoughts, inciting hatred between different ethnic groups and launching terrorist attacks. Now, both documentaries provide perspectives from people who actually live in Xinjiang and who have been impacted by terrorism and tormented by the threat of extremism and separatism. But strangely enough, the very same media that's been so vocal about Xinjiang-related news seem to have gone silent when it comes to reporting on these documentaries and the ugly realities these documentaries reveal. In a regular press conference on December the 9th, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying added some insights. Let's listen to what she said to the journalists in attendance that day.
Can you tell me frankly why you didn't report on this? Didn't you tell us that you have always held an objective, fair and comprehensive position? You are very concerned about Xinjiang issues. When there are liars with ulterior motives telling lies about Xinjiang, you rush to them. When the facts and truth of Xinjiang are presented to us, you avoid it. Why? What are you worried about? And what are you afraid of? Shouldn't you calm down and engage in serious reflection?
Now, she went on to say she hopes that more members of the media will actually watch the documentaries, think about them and report them objectively, as they have some responsibilities as reporters and journalists to do so. She added she looks forward to their truly comprehensive, impartial and unbiased reports, as do I. But so far, those that did report on the documentaries dismissed them as Chinese government propaganda, or missed the point that the policies stem from a real threat, not just a crackdown on so-called human rights. Let's look at our examples today. Our first article comes from The Guardian, which on December the 9th published, China claims detained Uyghurs have been freed. Now, the article reports on Monday's press conference where Xinjiang's governor, Shokrat Zakir, spoke to reporters about the vocational training centers, emphasizing that the program focused on teaching Chinese language skills, law and vocational skills to eliminate extremism. The report suggests that China's version of the story is suspect, however, when it says that certain leaked documents undermine the governor's claims. It then adds, in recent days, Beijing has launched an aggressive propaganda campaign in response to criticism of its policies in Xinjiang, And last Friday, the state broadcaster CCTV released a documentary called Fighting Terrorism in Xinjiang, which included footage of terrorist attacks. Over the last year, China has put on several curated state-organized trips to the region. Now, you know, I think the world wants to know what's going on in Xinjiang, but when Beijing goes out of its way to explain what's happening and why, it's automatically labeled propaganda. The article mentions the documentaries but fails to dedicate even a few lines to what they are about or the new information they share. There is not one mention of the previous terror attacks in the region or why the program was launched in the first place. Why not? Is it just too inconvenient for the Guardian's narrative to show the other side of the story? I have a special obligation to address our next article since my face is actually featured in it. The New York Times on December the 9th published an article which reads, "Facing criticism over Muslim camps, China says, what's the problem?" It says Chinese officials have released social media videos, blistering editorials and attacks on researchers in a push to counter evidence of its Muslim internment drive. And the article adds Beijing is using slick videos and strident editorials in its aggressive media campaign to defend its side of the story. Well, wouldn't it be more accurate to include the facts without the fancy adjectives so that readers can make up their own minds if the videos are slick, if the editorials are strident, my editorials probably, if the media's approach is indeed aggressive? My face appeared around the middle of the article as one such example, presumably. I appreciate that they included my commentary as another voice speaking out on the issue, but the article misses the bigger picture of Xinjiang, the background information on the region, the tremendous efforts made to not just eradicate terrorism, but lift the region, lift its people out of poverty, the overall progress that's been made in the region in terms of tourism, education and infrastructure. It's important to look at an issue from a holistic perspective instead of a series of tweets and posts. The article also mentions our channel when it says China's state-run international broadcaster CGTN posted several English-language videos on YouTube featuring footage of what is said were earlier attacks by Uyghurs swept up in extremism and separatist movements. But then the article features an expert on the region to question the videos. The expert says the videos could help deflect criticism of the detentions by playing on exaggerated fears that Uyghurs are susceptible to becoming terrorists. Are the fears exaggerated when there is a track record of terrorist attacks? Who gets to decide which fears are real and which are exaggerated? And who can be trusted to do a fair and balanced reporting job? From the previous headlines we've dissected so far, I really can't be so sure. To me, it seems that some media don't bother at all to highlight the Chinese views or perspective because they think it comes straight from the Chinese government. In their minds, it cannot be trusted. But is this wise? You can be doubtful of China's official position, but if you dismiss everything that's said by the Chinese government simply because it's been said by the Chinese government, I think that will be generalizing too much. In the Chinese or Confucian culture, the government is not the necessary evil, but the necessary good, which has a responsibility to provide protection and to steer socio-economic development. To dismiss something simply because it comes from the Chinese government will prevent people from knowing the whole picture. I acknowledge that it's difficult for journalists and experts to write about a place where they probably have never lived or about a complex issue with deep roots. It's the same challenge for me, but for the more than 24 million people who actually do live in Xinjiang, safety and stability matter. For them, it's reassuring that no terrorist attacks have occurred in Xinjiang over the past 3 years. That's a big deal, and this is a big victory for Xinjiang in the international war or fight against terror and extremism. we'll ask our guests to share their thoughts. But of course, I welcome your feedback and your comments. When we come back, we'll have Wei Nanzhi, a research fellow from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and from Wang Jiang from the Institute of Law of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences as well. Stay back to this edition of Headline Buster, brought to you by The Point with me, Liu Xin. Another heavy topic, not at all happy, I know. It's about the situation in Xinjiang. And I have with me Wei Nanzhi, research fellow from the Institute of American Studies from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and also from the same institution, Wang Jiang, postdoctoral researcher from the Institute of Law. So welcome to Headline Buster. Thank you very much for joining in this very difficult conversation. Let's not be blind to the kind of pressure that China is under, especially the Chinese government has been under because of these policies in Xinjiang. First of all, I want to get your reaction to what I have said just now, the kind of media observation from my perspective of the reports on Guardian and on New York Times. Ms. Wei?
I think it's very important for the media, not only the Chinese media, but also the Western media and the media all over the world, to observe the world from different perspectives, not only from one perspective. Nowadays, I think we suffer not from such kind of bias. If you are not be like us, then you are not correct. Because up till now, still the international power of media still under grasp of the Western media, and they think like us. That means should be abide by the principle of the Western media's political correctness. Otherwise, you are not correct. But it is important to think that human rights, no matter you're Chinese people, or European people, or people from Eastern world, and so on, well, human rights is equal. So we should worship the human rights of everybody. Especially we should attack with the terrorism, extremism, and so on. So I think we should have a more comprehensive and balanced view of the world, of everything.
Mr. Wang?
Oh, yes. I mean, I do talk with some of the foreign journalists of my friends, and they taught me, I think it's not only by those journalists sometimes far away from the reality, from the truth, from the facts. They are not really living in Xinjiang. And when we, I think it's similar as academic, when we're facing such complicated, sensitive issue, and sometimes you got difficulty to reach out the truth. But also they taught me there is a gap of the understanding between the journalist who's at the front line and also the editor back in London, back in New York, and back in Washington. And sometimes they do tell, I mean, the journalists do tell the truth, but the editor didn't agree. They say all the facts they gave with colored eyes. So the whole story has changed. When you say the news reports, whatever is on television or newspapers, things changed.
So the reason why the editors might not like what the journalists have written up is?
I mean, of course, even the journalists have the distance with the reality. They have even longer distance. And also some of them have like, I would say, ideology difference, culture difference. So of course, there's big gap.
Yeah. Now let's have some, take a look at some feedback we are getting from Bird of Paradise. The Western media is not only biased about Xinjiang, but they are all anti-China. China media like CGTN should push the story of Xinjiang forwards, no matter how challenges. The truth needs to be spreading.
I think there is a saying that the internet looks like it helps us to know more. Actually, it forbids us to know more. Why? Because at one side, the big information technology companies, actually they become the big entity. They have the power to control the information. Nowadays, information is power.
If they do not want us
then we can't. After that, it seems to be, oh, we are liberal from the power of the government. But actually, they are not liberal from the power of capitalism. It's very important. And on the other side, it seems to be that people tend to get information they want to get. I think we should have a more open and comprehensive system.
Because it is very inconvenient, let's say. It's disturbing to see these images. By the way, I forgot to say that these images are actually quite violent, very disturbing. We should have really warned people, you know, to have discretion when they watch them. But it is extremely disturbing when you watch them, and it's probably, you know, upsetting some people's. It will be very inconvenient, let's say, for some people. So maybe they choose not to watch it, or Wang Jiang?
Yeah, probably yes. It is very hard. I mean, especially for young people, older people, yeah, of course. And also I would like to point out it is in modern world with internet and all kind of information you can get, it is quite easy to put yourself in a comfort room, to just say, to pretend you know everything. But actually, probably you are not. And also, just like the professor pointed out, is are you really able to access all the information you want to look? Probably
only the information that's pushed to you.
Yeah.
That's recommended to you. And sometimes I think the social media has a big advantage or disadvantage at the same time, is that it appeals to your emotions very easily. So, you know, you can be swayed emotionally very fast, but if you really try to understand it or analyze it in a rational manner, you can't, you know, it doesn't really hold water. Sometimes an accusation becomes a fact. And that's the problem with a lot of information we're getting. Okay, for this person by the name of Joshua Pineda, the New York Times has no business talking about China. They ran an article in 2002 titled, "An Iraq War Won't Destabilize the Middle East. We all know how that turned out." So this seems to question the underlying, I do not know, stance or professionalism or ideology of this newspaper, or what's the problem this person trying to highlight here to you, Wang Jiang?
Yeah, I think the U.S. or let's say rather the whole Western on this issue, there is bad news and bad information, bad intelligence going on. It's misleading the general population, misleading people in U.S. Congress, and even right now misleading probably Donald Trump to make the wrong decision. And he gave an excellent example. I mean, also we can name quite a lot. I mean, about the WMD in Middle East and so on and so on. So I mean, it's just another example when the information goes wrong, the whole country's attitude and the policy will go wrong.
Well, I think it would be a blanket statement to say that New York Times is bad in all of its reporting.
Right.
I think it, yeah, I think we have to go high here and say I think there are good journalists who are very professional, who are conscientious. But on the other hand, when it comes to China issue, the New York Times seems to be particularly harsh sometimes.
I mean, myself I'm a fan of New York Times and also the Guardians. When I'm studying in UK, I'm reading Guardian all the times. And, but yes, just as you point out, in this particular issue, they do have something missed out. If you look at the reports they write, and you really hard to find they quote or they reference any of the Chinese scholar as an example, as to support anything. So they only tell like one side of the story, but not the both.
Well, but they did a good job by putting my video up there. It makes it seem, at least that they're very balanced, that they provide the other side of the story. But the very title of that article says, "Facing criticism over Muslim camps, China says, what's the problem?" You know, so it sounds as if I'm dismissing the whole thing and saying, hey, we don't have a problem of that, you know, clearly taking my message out of the context and make me sound as if I don't have you know, the sensitivity of being a human being in terms of when I talk about such a problem. Whereas what I really talked about was what's the problem of rehabilitation You know, when the approach that China is taking, why is it not doable? Why is it not effective, or why has China faced so much criticism for taking such an approach? But he just took the, you know, a bit of my statement and put it in the headline, make it sound as if we are trying to brush aside any accusation or any criticism, which is not what I was trying to do. All right, another message, Ronja Magnusson Östlund. Agree with this. They need to learn how to see things from several perspectives to get the correct information. So I guess this person is saying they agree that we should have a say, or our voice should also be featured so that people can understand the situation. So I think that's one of the biggest challenge, right, when it comes to reporting on China, is that often the other side of the story is either not featured at all, or if it is featured, it's propaganda, or it comes from the Chinese government. So it must not be true. You know, I think, okay, you don't have to trust everything that the Chinese government says, but to dismiss everything is also a problem.
For sure. It is often the case that if somebody say, oh, what Chinese government has done is good, and say, oh, it is propaganda. Why? Because Chinese history, Chinese culture, Chinese system, all the things are somehow, to a different extent, somehow different from the Western system, Western cultures, and Western history. So it is not so easy for them to understand. It's true. But the problem is not easy or not. The problem is you trying to understand, to know more, to get a better, balanced information or not. I think the way is more important than the distance.
And I said in my commentary, I want to get your feedback. In China, the government is not the necessary evil that has to be kept as small as possible at a distance. You know, in China, the government is the big parent, basically, right? The necessary good. The government has the responsibility to provide jobs, to provide security, to provide welfare, to provide, you know, insurance. So it's a very different social compact, I would even say.
Yeah, I mean, it's from our history and also our culture, our political system, and it's just simply different. I mean, you cannot use your standard to apply, simply just apply on us. And you do need to understand and somehow to respect this system.
Right. But very important is my professor, my doctor tutor, he always emphasized, China, use only 70 years has overspread 200 years of European countries' efforts. That means that 70 years ago, the living standard, everything of Chinese normal people are not so good, but nowadays, the Chinese people's life, not only in the economic development, but also social progress and everything, have been great progress. It's true. It's the responsibility of Chinese government, but also, I think, it's the achievement of Chinese government. We should realize
Give them the due credit. Of course, the Chinese people worked very, very hard as well. But either part of that will not be possible. And by the way, I think people maybe really should think about the approach that's been taken in Xinjiang, because after the measures have been taken, Xinjiang is much safer. You know, in which part of the world has terrorism been dealt with in such an effective manner? I think due attention and due respect need to be given there.
Yes, the sense of security is a human right, you know.
For everybody.
Yeah, for everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
We have to leave it there. Many thanks to Wei Nanzhi and Wang Jiang from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. And thank you for having followed us. As I said last time, do send me any video that you think are interesting, that you have filmed using your mobile phone or whatever other device. Send it to me to the email address at thepointwithalex@cgtn.com. Thanks for watching Headline Buster, brought to you by The Point with me, Lu Xin. See you next week at the same time.